Okay, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to focus on the central nervous system itself, the CNS.
Chapter 11.
Huh?
Chapter 11.
Yeah. The CNS itself is basically everything in the brain and the spinal cord. Nothing more and nothing less. It's the brain and the spinal cord. And I want you to be clear in your understanding that the brain and the spinal cord are considered separate only because we as humans like to have defined boundaries, don't we? I like to know where my students are when they're not here, which is why I'm a little annoyed with two of them. To all of those of you at home who are listening, thank you for the ones that did tell me you were on that trip. Yes, we're having a laugh at your expense. So, is everybody clear on that? We consider basically anything outside the skull is the spinal cord, the stuff inside is the brain. As you're going to see when we start talking about the brain stem, there is some overlap, okay? The spinal cord functions pretty much only as a relay station. Thank you. Only as a relay station. It takes in signals from pretty much the entire body. The cranial nerves are a special exception, but that's because they're located in the head itself, right next to the brain. And the structure of the spinal cord, if you were to do a cross section, it would look pretty much like a butterfly. And the reason is because it is composed of both white matter and gray matter. There's a cross section.
You say white matter and what?
Gray matter, G-R-A-Y. Everybody see why? So it's kind of obvious, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's the spinal cord?
Yep, that's a cross section of the spinal cord. So just the inner portion there that looks like the darker part of the butterfly, that is gray matter. The rest of that outside of there is white matter. Remember, the white matter has the myelin sheaths, it's faster. And it makes sense because if you're going to have all these nerves coming in and out, and some of these things are pretty darn long when you think about how big the nerves are that get down through the legs. And I assure you, having had issues with my lumbar spinal cord, and I've had some issues with nerves in the legs, and you feel it. So, is everybody clear on the general structure there? And it also has a central canal. Central canal. that central canal is filled with cerebrospinal fluid. When we get to the brain, we'll also talk about some of the structures in the brain that are covered, or excuse me, that are also filled with cerebrospinal fluid. That's why we say cerebrum, head. It's all contiguous. Keep that in mind. It's all contiguous.
So is that where they get, if they do a lumbar puncture, is that what they get it pulled out of?
That's exactly what a lumbar puncture is. That's where they go in. You ever heard spinal tap?
I had one done.
I know. It is not a pleasant experience, is it?
I was asleep, so I don't know.
Well, I'm glad you were.
It hurt like a bad word after, like a couple days after, but that's all I know.
Well, I put that right up there with dying. 0 and 5 stars, do not recommend. Stay away. It's unfortunate they have to do that sometimes, but the reason they do it is because that allows them to sample the actual fluid that's circulating through the nervous system. Based on the contents of the cerebrospinal fluid, they can identify a lot of different syndromes, whether or not you have, a viral infection, whether or not you have a bacterial infection, whether or not it's autoimmune, various things like that. It's not something they do lightly, but if you have any evidence of any kind of nervous system infection especially, they want to check that to verify. Given where mine was, I guess you can figure, yeah. Although in fairness, I was probably in so much pain from the actual cyst that ruptured back there, or lesion that ruptured, than I was from the spinal tap. Anyway, the meninges, MENINGES, the meninges. Y'all ever heard of these? You ever heard the phrase meningitis? Mm-hmm. Meningitis is an inflammation of the meninges, and the meninges are simply 3 overlapping membranes that surround the entire brain and spinal cord. The outermost one is called the dura mater. Dura mater. D-U-R-A-M-A-T-E-R. That's Latin for tough mother. You laugh, but I'm actually quite serious. It's fairly dense. It's the most protective one. Tough, white, dense connective tissue. This actually is contiguous with the periosteum of the bones of the skull, so it forms their innermost layer. Below that, we'll get all through them, and then I'll talk about a couple of things. Below that, you have the arachnoid matter. Arachnoid. A-R-A-C-H-N-O-I-D. The arachnoid mater, M-A-T-E-R. Spider-like. And it's a thin, web-like membrane. Does not have its own blood supply. and then between that layer and the next layer, you have the subarachnoid space that is filled with CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. The subarachnoid space that is filled with cerebrospinal fluid. Any questions? And then below that, you've got the third and final layer. And that third and final layer is called the pia mater, the pia mater. And basically, these three things protect the entire central nervous system. Oh, and the pia mater, if you're wondering, it literally means gentle mother. It's very, very highly innervated, so it has a lot of nerves and the blood vessels that nourish the brain itself. And basically, meningitis is an inflammation of the meninges. It's generally caused by an infection. Viral meningitis isn't a fun experience, but it's generally not considered life-threatening. Unfortunately, bacterial meningitis is a real danger. Both of these, you get stiff neck, fever, severe headache. For viral meningitis, support basically, rest and lots of fluids. You'll generally kick it yourself. Bacterial meningitis, especially in young people your age, is life-threatening, potentially fatal. And if you don't catch it in time, essentially they have to give you vasosuppressors that essentially close the blood vessels in your extremities to force the blood to the brain. When I was teaching at Vanderbilt, the star basketball player, she was the center for one of the local smaller Christian colleges there in Nashville itself, caught a case of bacterial meningitis. And by the time it was over, they had to amputate both of her legs. And I think she may have lost her hands and forearm too. She was very lucky to survive. And we're talking somebody who, 24 hours before, just starts feeling kind of bad, has a severe headache and a stiff neck. There is a vaccine available for the bacterial meningitis. And if you have college students living in a dorm, they always advise you to get it. Because that many people living in those close quarters, that's where it's most commonly seen. Below the dura mater, let's say that you get a sharp blow to the head. I told you all about my little incident where I nearly fell off the bluff, didn't I?
No.
Oh, your compadres picked the wrong day to miss because they don't get to hear all my good stories. This was yet another one of my 9+ lives I've used up. And I'm not lying, this is pretty serious. I was teaching a class at Vanderbilt, and it was a plant field-based course where we go out and look at different plants and identify the habitat and that sort of thing. So I knew I was teaching the next day, so I went out, the day I went out, to scout the area and make sure that the stuff I had seen last spring was still there. It was early March, so it was still fairly cool. I was trying to catch the earliest plants that come up, and this site had about a 30-foot slope. Then it dropped straight about 200 feet to the Cumberland River. I parked on the side of the road. Like I said, it had about 30 feet, and it's lightly wooded, and that's what I was looking for. I was looking for bloodroot. It had rained the night before, and I stepped on some dead leaves. But underneath it was nothing but slick mud. My feet went out from under me, and I started sliding immediately towards the cliff so fast. The only thing I could do to keep myself from going off was grab a tree that was growing up the cliff. And it caught me, you can imagine, right here. And when I say I was moving fast, I was moving fast. This wasn't just a little love tap. It knocked me out. So when I came to, my legs are dangling over the edge of the cliff. I have blood pouring down my face. I can't see out of the eye. And whenever I try to breathe or even move, I feel a ripping, grinding pain in. Bet you know what that is.
Broken ribs.
You got it. Turned out I had 3 broken ribs. And the best part, nobody even knows I'm out in the field, let alone where I am. Yeah, there's just a road 30 feet up there, but it's not a well-traveled road. And this is in the days before cell phones. So I had to crawl up that slope with broken ribs, bloody face, get in my car and drive myself 15 miles to the hospital. Not my best experience. Not my finest hour either, being out there by myself. It's one of the reasons I emphasize safety with you. But they cleaned up the cut. They did the neurological concussion check because of blow to the head. That's what you worry about, right? And fortunately, I didn't have any neurological symptoms. Gave me a big rubber band to wrap around my broken ribs, told me to take some Advil or Tylenol, whichever I preferred, and just not do anything for several weeks. About 3 days later, I got vertigo so bad that I was laying flat on the bed, gripping it on both sides, and it still felt like it was just whirling. One of the worst experiences I've ever had. And they had told me if you develop any additional symptoms, report back. So stupid me waits till the wife gets home, and I tell her, and she calls student health for me, and they say, get him up here immediately. But she says, no, get him up here immediately or we're sending an ambulance. So obviously I got seen as soon as I got up there. Literally, I walked through the doors, and what they were looking for was to see whether or not I had something called a subdural hematoma. Sub means below, dura. They were looking to see if I had bleeding in that space below the dura mater. Because if I'd had that, it could have been life-threatening immediately. Y'all have heard of fluid on the brain or cranial pressure? That's what it would have been. And we're talking like 3 days later. So they got me in. I mean, like I said, I'm walking in the door and they're meeting me there with a gurney. I'm shocked they let my wife drive, to be honest. And they took me right in there. Thank God the same doctor was there. He did the eyes. He said, I'm telling you right now, I don't think it is. But we have to be certain. That's why they did the CT scan. Came back clear. Doc said, you're going to think I'm a witch doctor, what I'm about to tell you, but you've messed up your inner ear, the semicircular canals. It's where your sense of balance is. He said, you're going to have a rough 2 weeks, but it'll essentially heal on its own. Pretty cool. And here we go, you let me get off on these rabbit trails again like you always do. Don't worry, the other class never does. So I'm bringing this up because I want you to understand a lot of the things we're talking about today are very serious illnesses, syndromes, injuries, or whatever, okay? When you get damage to the central nervous system, the result is almost always going to be unpredictable. If you sever the spinal cord, you lose all function below the break in the body. Make sure you get that in your notes.
Can you repeat that?
If you sever the spinal cord completely, you lose all function below the break. Now again, that's a complete break. When somebody talks about breaking their back, what they literally mean is they have severed their spinal cord. Now you can get a partial severing, and you may still have some function below that. But I think it's kind of obvious as you think about it. You get a break in the main relay switch, you're not going to have any signal going through, are you? And obviously this means you're paralyzed. Which I don't know why they say that, because it's not entirely true. Paralyzed to me means you literally are locked in one position. You can't move your own limbs, but people can move them for you. And they almost always prescribe physical therapy for paraplegics to keep the muscles toned. The autonomic systems still function, but you'll basically lose pretty much all control or function. It's very common to be bladder incontinent, fecal incontinence, lose all sexual function. If the break is high enough, you die. The cervical vertebrae are the ones where you have to worry. If you get a break in any of the cervical region or higher, you're almost certainly going to be what they call a quadriplegic, which means you have no movement at all from the neck down. You may have to be on a respirator for the rest of your life. Very, very tough thing to deal with. The old Westerns, you always see the guys meet the fate with the hangman, right? Well, the long drop hanging doesn't kill by suffocation. It doesn't choke you to death. What they do is when they pull that trapdoor out and you drop down, the way the rope and the knot is tied, when you come to stop at the very bottom, it jerks in such a specific way that it actually severs the spinal cord. I can't remember if it's C1 or C2 vertebra, and it's pretty much an instant kill. Don't look at me that way, I'm not a hangman.
C1 and C2 connected together?
Huh?
Ain't C1 and C2 connected together?
Well, they're all
there's
connected.
No, there's like one that doesn't rotate or doesn't
Yeah.
have a...
And I think that's why, again, I'm not an expert. As an aside, Britain used to use hanging, and they had basically a national executioner, and this guy had performed literally hundreds of hangings. And after they found the Nazis guilty at Nuremberg, they went out and got a drunk rookie from the U.S. Army who was a bit of a crook and had never done it before. So when the Nazis hung, they didn't die quickly. They basically hung there until they choked. Didn't know that, did you? Victor's justice. So, tell them I said hi. Oh, I thought you were texting.
No, I was just listening and fiddling.
When cell phones first came out with the texting capability, you could always tell when your students were texting.
No, I was just fiddling. I was listening, I swear.
I remember one guy, I caught him about 5 times. The 6th time, he's like, "How do you see that?" And I said, "Shane, every time I look over there, you've got your head bowed." I don't know what's going on down there, but it couldn't be that interesting if you're not texting. His face gets so red, he never texted again in class. Anyway, so everybody kind of understand where this goes. The structure of the cord itself, let's talk a little bit more. I hate this particular way this guy does such a good job on so many things, but then he doesn't really do a good job with. Take a look on page 145, the electronic version, and look at figure 11.14, and that will show you all of the region of the spinal cord. Everybody see that? The thing I want you to be most aware of is that you have a pair of spinal nerves that come out between each pair of vertebrae.
What page and figure was it on?
145.
Becca said she will be here.
So everybody see that? And basically, and thank you, each pair controls a specific portion of the body. Obviously, you're going to get signals from the right feeding into the right. You're going to get signals from the left feeding into the left. At the top of the spinal cord going into the skull, there is a hole called the foramen magnum. The foramen magnum.
She said
Angie.
they're about 15 minutes from school and then she's gonna be in.
Okay, thank you. And did you send her my thanks? I appreciate her letting me know that. We'll see how many of her compadres we can roast. Get caught skipping school.
They went to Corbin.
Huh?
They went to Corbin.
Well, that's fine. I don't mind them taking the trip. I just need to know. And if they're getting back, and we've still got an hour and a half of class, that's a good reason to come, isn't it?
Well, Ross sent to the group chat last night, if you're going on a trip,
That's what I was
be sure
getting
to
ready to
text him.
That's what I was getting ready to say. Bryce sent out a message that said, remember, if you're going to miss, text Roger.
Roger?
Yeah.
Y'all call me Roger?
He did.
Well, I don't care. I'm not picky. As long as you don't call me Smitty, I'll let you call me pretty much anything you want.
No, he just said make sure you send a remind out or a message out to him and remind him if you're going to miss.
Well, even if I got it secondhand, I still got it. And that's why I'm pleased that you're looking out for Becca and she looks out for you. You guys are good friends, aren't you? Some of these people, I don't know. But anyway, back to the part that's above the foramen magnum. You see how that goes into the, yeah, even then just shut off my tablet. Goes into the skull. There's a part of it there that actually goes internal. That's the brainstem.
Which part's the foramen magnum?
The foramen magnum is right here. So you see how the tan thing that looks like a tube, that's the spinal cord. But a lot of people just think that it technically ends there. Well, it actually goes further up in there, and it's part of the brain. That's why I say don't get hung up on this idea that the spinal cord is separate or distinct from the brain. It's like when I was telling you about the dura mater, it forms the periosteum of the skull bone. We like to think that our heads are like an onion, just peel layer after layer. It's not exactly like that. It's all contiguous. Is everybody with me on that? You have two enlargements. Everybody see them? Here and here. The cervical enlargement and the lumbar enlargement. See if anybody can tell me why we have more nerves in the lumbar and cervical regions. Any ideas?
It's where your legs and arms are at, right?
Bingo. That's because they're controlling the arms and the legs. Good job. Let's take a 5-minute break. I'll make sure they know who they owe for this. It's already 30 minutes of a lecture, so they've got enough to catch up on. That's like 6 TikTok videos, y'all. I know you don't have an attention span that long. Ha ha. Anyway, back to the spinal cord. There's one thing that I want to make sure that you're aware of, and it's called a reflex arc. A reflex arc. A reflex arc works when you get a stimulus that's received from one of your appendages, meaning your hands, arms, legs, feet, etc. And the signal travels to the spinal cord from the PNS. However, it does not get routed to the brain to be processed and then send out a response. Instead, it jumps immediately to a motor neuron which generates a nearly immediate reflexive response. In other words, you don't have time to think about it. It happens automatically. Does anybody see the advantage of that? Speed. Speed. You are pulling back your hand from the hot stove before you even had a chance to realize you were burned. Reflexes are pretty much impossible to stop unless there is a severing of one of the portions. They are reflexive, meaning they are instinctual, meaning you have no physical control over them. Some things just happen. When you get an itch, you can't make it stop, can you? You can't just will the itch to go away. You have to actually do something about it, don't you? We've all done the hot stove thing, haven't we? I'm not saying deliberately. I know you wouldn't go up there and stick your finger on, well, actually, given a vaccine talk, maybe you would.
I crawled over a stove one time and I burnt my hand really bad. I was like, probably like 4. So.
When I was about 2 or 3, my father had opened the fuse panel on a water heater and was changing out something, and he had left it open. And Lord knows what I was thinking. I took this little miniature shovel-eyed pail that I had, you know, the kind you dig in the beach, and I stuck that metal shovel in there and shorted the whole thing out while I was in contact with it. Apparently the force of it just threw me back. Mom heard me crying and ran downstairs, and it's full of smoke, and I'm crying my eyeballs out, and it had melted the shovel. That's how much juice was going through there. Reflexes. They save your life. Jump scares, do you get jump scares? Even if you know it's coming, you're still going to flinch because it's a reflex. Does everybody see where I'm going with this? And one of the reasons they test your reflexes with the little hammer is to basically see how well your nervous system is functioning. What are you doing?
Peeling that off now.
Huh?
Peeling that off.
Pulling a hair.
Peeling that off.
Oh.
I'm done now. I'm just fidgeting.
So with the spinal cord, biggest danger is a break. Okay? That's the most likely source of damage that you'll get, a break. You're probably not going to get a real problem from an infection unless it's an outlier like I had. And even when I had the infection, when that abscess ruptured, the worry and the concern was from the toxins from the bacteria in my bloodstream, not that it would damage my spine. Does everybody see that? So when you break your back, people say that, they generally mean a severing of the spinal cord. Make sure you understand that. How well you deal with a broken back depends on three things. Number one, where is the break located? A higher break is going to have more impact than a lower break. Number two, your age and overall general health. And number three is going to be the speed of treatment. Very often, you'll have so much swelling from the trauma that they can't really make an accurate prediction of what's going to happen. What they have to do is get the swelling down. I mentioned to you about bacterial meningitis. They may actually give you corticosteroids to combat the swelling while simultaneously giving antibiotics, because you can't have any of that in your central nervous system. The biggest thing that protects it is the blood-brain barrier. We talked about that already, the blood-brain barrier. Has everybody got that? Mm-hmm. All right, moving on to the brain. The brain is the processing unit. Signals go in. A network of neurons or multiple networks of neurons work in your brain, and they send out a command. What you do with that command, how you respond, all of that is something that the processor decides. For example, I had a roast beef sandwich and some potato chips for lunch. I came in much later today than I normally did because I had an appointment. I don't like drinking coffee with a meal. So when I happened to be wandering by the vending machine, my thirst made itself known to my brain. What did I do then? I decided I don't want to drink cold, black, weak coffee with my meal. I want something sweet. So I went over there and I looked at the selection of carbonated beverages and I input, and even though the racks are full, the glitch in the machine says sold out. So I tried the next row over, and the glitch in the machine said, sold out. So then I impulsively went for the non-dietary option, and you see it sitting over there. Why did I get Mellow Yellow instead of my favorite beverage, which is Dr. Pepper? Because the yellow color caught my eye, and I thought, yeah, that sounds good. You see where the brain comes in? You saw how much stuff going on? This is called two things. Number one, integration. Number two is processing. Integration and processing. The senses supply information that comes in. The brain integrates the various types of sensory information and processes it. I cannot tell you how important that is. The example I was giving, did my brain interpret many things from the sensory information from the Mellow Yellow? I had visual information. That brown collar caught my eye, didn't it? Memory came into play here. I said I wanted something sweet. I don't know if there is a sweeter soda than Mellow Yellow. Would you all agree? My memory reminded me that back in the days when I could drink Sugar Dime, I loved to drink that. Did something else factor in? My inability to get the diet stuff, right? All of that required multiple sources of information. That's what integration is. You take multiple information streams and combine them. So make sure you've got that definition of integration in your notes.
Can you repeat the definition?
You take in multiple information streams and combine them. Visualize a bottle of Mellow Yellow for me, Abby. What color is it?
It's yellow.
Does it have a sweet taste?
Yep.
See, you're integrating memory, aren't you? Make sure that you understand that memory is a form of information. It is an input into the integration process. If I brought in some of my British burdock and dandelion soda, would you have any idea what that would taste like, Becca? What about any of you? You've never tried burdock and dandelion soda?
No.
My goodness, you don't pay $3 a can for something to import it from the UK?
No.
I don't either. Because you've never encountered that stimulus, have you?
Is this in chapter 11 or 12?
Yeah, chapter 11. And don't worry, I did record the video.
Oh, awesome.
You should thank Becca for that and Sarah, because if Becca hadn't told me y'all were coming back and Sarah hadn't told me y'all were on the way, I would have been vindictive. No, I knew y'all were coming back. I think Araya told me to.
Yeah.
And thank y'all for messaging me and letting me know. I appreciate that. Did y'all have a good trip?
Yeah, well, we didn't even know about it till yesterday. They just sprung it upon us and they were like, hey, we're going somewhere. We're not going to tell you why. And
Yeah, I took the night off. I slept in this morning. Still got up early, even though I slept in, because I had an appointment to get my hair cut. Get up and I look. You have 7. I thought, oh Lord, what happened? Did the school blow up?
Hey, it did our freshman year. Kitchen blew up.
yeah, we had to sit in the baseball field for
Yeah.
about an hour and a half waiting for the fire department.
Yeah.
Wow.
Half the school was at the football field and half the school was at the baseball field.
It was crazy.
I was in the breezeway.
Oh, I remember that.
Did you know I actually played on that football field?
Hmm?
Did y'all know I actually played on that football field?
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, we drove up here and got our heads handed to us. Let's take